Early this month, a chartered flight from Dallas, Texas, in the United States of America landed at the Douala International Airport with 86 Cameroonians on board. They were asylum seekers who, according to U.S. authorities, fell short of the necessary requirements despite claims of persecution by the government of Cameroon within the disturbing conflict in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. The circumstance which led to their deportation is generating outrage from activists in the United States who are decrying various forms of human rights abuses meted on them. In the meantime, others who have made the deadly trip across South and Central America are stranded at the U.S.-Mexico border in their quest to enter the United States of America. They continue to protest the refusal by both U.S. and Mexican authorities in facilitating the asylum process. News of their imminent repatriation is causing more anxiety and consent. In this edition of the program, we are receiving a U.S.-based activist who is fighting tooth and nail to stop the deportation of Cameroon asylum seekers. She will be telling us why she believes that America must instead give protection to those fleeing what is now known as the Anglophone crisis. This is Her Talk. Our guest tonight is the founder, president, and chief executive officer of the Cameroon American Council. Since 2010, when the body was founded, the Cameroon American Council has been forwarding its mission to build capacity, relevance, and visibility in African communities in the United States of America. This is through three signature programs: arts, outreach, advocacy, and capacity building. She has received several awards for her advocacy. Amongst them is an award from former U.S. President Barack Obama for her advocacy in extending Obamacare to black immigrants in the United States, particularly those from West and Central Africa. Sylvie Ngassa Bello is her name, and she now joins us live from Washington, D.C. in the United States of America. Sylvie Ngassa Bello, thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure having you.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm so excited about this wonderful opportunity. Hello from the American nation's capital, Washington, D.C.
Exactly. We know that the state capital is hitting up with elections, but we shall be having a few words on that in the course of the program. Now, let's go straight to the burning issue. 2 weeks ago, a chartered flight from Texas arrived at Douala International Airport with over 80 Cameroonian asylum seekers on board. You are one of those who are not happy with the decision to move out the asylum seekers from the U.S. Why are you not satisfied?
Well, the United States actually and Cameroon have some pretty good refugee laws. You're not going to believe this, but Cameroon has, refugees from the Boko Haram crisis, from the Seleka and Antibakala crisis, right? And same thing with the United States. So when you're fleeing conflicts such as Boko Haram, when you're fleeing conflicts such as Seleka and Antibakala from the Central African country and coming into Cameroon or coming into the U.S., you need to be protected because we should not send people back to war zones. As you know, right now in Cameroon, yes, there's an Anglophone armed conflict, which is the crisis that we all talk about, but we also have people in the northern part of our country, Cameroon, right, that are fleeing Boko Haram. We also have people in the east of our country that are fleeing our own Cameroonians that are fleeing the effects of Seleka and Antibakala crisis coming out of Central African Republic. So those are 3 out of 5 armed conflicts in Cameroon, and the Cameroonians who come out of those conflicts make their way to the United States. You also have heard of what happened in Gabo, right, where we finally heard that not just the Cameroon government, but we also had folks from actually part of where my tribe is from, which are the Fulani and the Bororo people who unfortunately colluded with the Cameroon government. And where I'm from in Moi subdivision in North in Dongamantung, we have this religious freedom where we have Muslims who tend to be Bororos, and we have Christians and other indigenous religions who are conflicting and fighting, right? So these 5 armed conflicts bring people to Ecuador, cross 8 countries and into the United States. So yes, we did not want them going back. So just to be clear, there are not all of them from the Anglophone crisis, though yes, a majority came from the conflicts in the northwest and southwest of our beloved Cameroon. Thank you.
Yeah, now most of the asylum seekers submitted documents to be accorded refugee status, but the U.S. government says that their documents were valid. What do you have to say on that?
Look, when you're fleeing conflict, right? I mean, you know that you're on the ground. You don't always have all your birth certificates. You don't always have all your medical records, right? I mean, that's the whole point of fleeing. The number one priority, if you think about Maslow's pyramid, right? The number one priority is safety, right? You're not thinking the type of self-actualization. Well, do I have everything? Do I have every document to show that I was beaten? Do I have all the police records? The police usually is why you're running, right? And as you know, in Bamenda and many other places, you know, both the Amazonian militia, right, and the Cameroon military have attacked, you know, schools, have attacked you know, hospitals, right? Have attacked government buildings, right? Think about the SDO in Batibo, right? You know, so finally, where do you get documentations from? And that is one of our points of contention, that no, the American government did not deport these men and women because of lack of documents. The American government retaliated because as Cameroonians, right? Cameroonians are known to be a force of resistance in the detention centers. Cameroonians are known as a force of resistance as they're coming through Ecuador, crossing 8 countries to get to U.S.-Mexico border. They have been fighting anti-Blackness. They have been fighting anti-Africanness, right? As well as they have just been fighting the system. And I'm sorry, I will not put anything past a government, right, that has been around for 50 years. If you look at the current Cameroonian government, you're going to find individuals who have literally served for 50 years, since independence, maybe even 60 years, right? You don't have to go far on some of those individuals, right? We all know them. The pictures are everywhere we go, right? So these governments could be lobbying the American government, right, to get these men and women out. It's definitely not documentation. It does not make sense. I'm sure the hard talk viewers are going to say this doesn't make sense. It is one of 2 things. One, a retaliation because Cameroonians went on hunger strike. Cameroonians in detention protested, right? And I'm sure you've also heard about our sister Pauline, whose reproductive organs were gutted out, stolen, and possibly sold, right? So between that explanation of retaliation from the American government, the second explanation could be lobbying from the Cameroonian government. So so I'm gonna let folks, you know, marinate on that and let us know what they think. It's definitely not documentations. Come on, you're fleeing a war.
But the government says that some of these asylum seekers must have lied about their situation. The proof is that the government says that some of them are officially civil servants who are working in the Cameroonian civil service but wanted to use the various conflicts as a motive to gain papers in the United States. Don't you think that might be true?
Look, that is the reason why we need reconciliation immediately. That's the reason why we need referendum immediately. When there is war, there is chaos. Okay? Civil servants are people too. When the military is dying, those are civil servants. Do you think they like to die? Do you think their families want them to die? Okay, fine. You're going to say, well, they chose to be in the military. But what about those who are teachers working in government schools who got killed? Did they choose to die? Right? What about those who are nurses and working as essential workers in various parts of the Cameroon government? Right? You know, like for instance, in Bamenda a couple of years ago, the women's center was burned to the ground. Right? I mean, civil servants don't need protection. So yes, it's very possible that some of these men and women fled the war. And yes, it's very possible that in that, again, Maslow's pyramid, safety, not their jobs, was their number one priority, right? We've heard of people getting killed just by association from either the Ambazonian militia or the Cameroon government, right? Just by association. Then what about the actual people working for the government or the actual people working for the Ambazonian militia, right? Or any of the other forms of
conflicts.
Of conflicts, right? Be it Boko Haram, right? There are women right now. We worked a couple of months ago with my dear comrade and Fekaret's sister, the great, Mama Kawala, on women in detention, right? A lot of these women it was all by association. Oh, we think you're part of this. Oh, we think you're part of that. One of them is Germaine, my sister. She's from my tribe. Matter of fact, she's my cousin. Germaine Zenju has been in detention longer than Sese Seko, right? She has been in detention and incarcerated, right? Prior to the October 1st, 2017, right? So imagine that you were close to Germaine and when they picked her up and you run. You know what I'm saying? So absolutely not. I know the viewers of Hard Talk are discerning viewers. And so when they hear the Cameroon government saying this, they're going to ask themselves, are civil servants not people worth protecting? Thank you.
But the question also should be that, should the civil servants lie, even those who are in safe areas? Should they lie to get papers from the United States? Should they use the Anglophone crisis as a move to get their private papers in the United States? That is really the problem.
So the problem the Cameroon government should be worried about is ending the war. I mean, where are their priorities right now? Where are their priorities? Okay, you're not going to expect, first class, second class, third class in terms of hierarchy from the government, right? Who has literally no protection, right? A lot of them have not been paid. And no, you cannot tell me that the Anglophone crisis ends just in the Northwest and Southwest.
Of course.
I'm sorry. You cannot tell me Boko Haram, right? Because as you can tell from my last name, Bello, I'm from the area between Adamawa and the Northwest. And Boko Haram does not end in the extreme north or Adamawa. It just doesn't. Right? The anti-Seleka and Bakala crisis on the east, where our brothers and sisters in Beto are feeling it, does not end there. We are a country. The national triangle means that any injustice anywhere, like Dr. King said, it affects us in Douala, where I was born. It affects us in Yaoundé, in Saint-Melima, where my mother was born, even though she's Bamileke, right? It affects us everywhere, right? So these civil servants could have family members in the Northwest and Southwest, right? They could themselves be born in the Northwest and Southwest, or out in Boko Haram area, or out in, where Boko Haram has infected the area, or where the Seleka and Anti-Bakala has affected the area. So I'm not sure. And so this also brings me to another point, right, which is really pathetic, that I remember when Boko Haram started, because we worked on the advocacy to mitigate Boko Haram, right? So when that started, you know what people were saying? Oh, that's just in the north. Oh, no, that's not a problem. That's just in the north. But the north of Cameroon is Cameroon. People got displaced, right? There were people that left their homes in Batsuri, in Waza up there, in Marua, Gara, Boundary, and fled to the south, right? Same thing with the Northwest. So I'm really hopeful that the Cameroon government will look at these men and women who lost so much hope in the Cameroon government, lost hope in the Ambazonia militia, right? Lost hope, just for all of us, really. I feel like we failed them, right? And for them to run to Ecuador, cross and trek 8 countries. I mean, imagine you going to the dense forest in Sangmelima, or the dense forest in Lebialem, and crossing the forest, right? That's what they did. Came to America to seek refuge, and the international community, which America is part of, failed them. So what we need to focus right now is what would cause men, women, many of them, even teenagers, right, to flee in that manner. How can we stop that from happening? How can we even, because right now they're vulnerable, right? They need mental health, they need food, they need housing, they need love and support. We should not be blaming them. What we need to be blaming are the actors that caused these men and women to flee. That's the Cameroon government, all of the terror groups, right? All of the militia groups, right? All of the religious conflicts, all of the post-electoral conflicts, right? Those are the actors of the 5 armed conflicts we need to be focused on. Because they say when elephants fight, the grass suffers.
All right, Sylvie, following the deportation of the first batch, I must say first batch because the information that we have, and you might also confirm that there might be other deportations that will be carried out in the weeks ahead, and that's what you're trying to stop. But now, have you tried to meet the U.S. Immigration and Custom Enforcement officials? If yes, what have they been saying concerning the deportation of Cameroon asylum seekers?
Thank you. Of course, we engage with the American government. That's why we were founded, right? We were founded in 2010 to connect, Cameroonians in America with the U.S. government. So yes, the department that handles that is called DHS, which is the Department of Homeland Security. And within that, the department that handles detentions and deportation is called ICE. Yeah. Yes, they're very cold. ICE is for Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, and ICE. We've had, they have an office called an Office of Public Engagement, where people from the public, not just us as activists, but you as the media from anywhere around the world, faith leaders that want to pray, for the men and women, imams, pastors, and the like. They engage with basically every taxpayer and other public interest folks who are interested in the work that they do, right? And so in their conversations with them, as you would imagine, they said that we are peddling, false information about their reasoning behind deportation.
But what exactly did they tell you?
So that's what they're saying. Mm-hmm. We're arguing that, we actually filed a complaint, not one, but 2. So the Cameroon American Council, with allies such as Southern Poverty Leadership Center, also known as SPLC, such as FFI, which is Freedoms for Immigrants, and other organizations, we filed a civil rights complaint, right, to the Inspector General of the Department of Homeland Security. Basically, the Inspector General is the office that does basically the checks and balances, right? They make sure, hey, is our department humane? Is our department following its own procedures? Is our department discriminating? And if so, how can we make that better? How can we rectify that? So we filed a complaint exactly on those things, saying that the department has discriminated not just to Black people, not just to Africans in detention, but specifically to Cameroonians. We told them that we believe there's an anti-Cameroonianness in detention. We believe that Cameroonian men and women are being targeted because they protest medical negligence, because they protest the judicial system, the judges that are in these immigration judges, because they protest, just the bias that comes from Cameroon. Exactly some of the things you're saying, documents, right? I mean, who do you think makes the world's fakest documents? The United States of America, okay? When you think about the recession that happened, was this because of fake documents coming out of Kumba? Okay? When you think about Wall Street tumbling, right? Was it because of fake documents coming out of Kumba? No. It was specifically because of the fake documents and the fake paperwork that comes out of the United States, system. We have an entire FBI that tracks fake documents. Do you think 90% of their work is about Cameroonians' documents? Absolutely not. It's about gangsters. It's about the mafia. Do you think any of these Cameroonians have the level of Hollywood movie mafia documentation fraud? Absolutely not. And so that's what we tell them, and that's what we filed in our complaint. So we're still waiting for the official response to our complaints. But I want to let you know, and your viewers, this. As a result of, because we filed 2 official complaints, as a result of one of them, some of the Cameroonian men who were detained in Adams County in Mississippi, which is the south of America, were actually taken out of the plane, right? So we are proud that because of our work, some of the men did not make that journey. Have they been released out of detention? No. But it just means that we are still working through the process until they can be released. So basically that has been our engagement. It has been talking with them, emailing them, meeting with them, as well as damn right just filing an official complaint. We're also in the process of suing the Bureau of Immigration Appeals, because after you file your asylum, once your asylum gets denied, you can appeal. And you appeal to the Bureau of Immigration Appeals. We're also in the process of suing them as well. So we've taken various forms of engagement, right, from the soft to the really hard and hardened end, because we want our people safe. And yes, there are many more in detention, but just like the prodigal son, you're always worried, or the prodigal daughter, you're always worried about the one who is out and in danger. Thank you.
All right. You said they are in danger, but the Cameroon government said on State Radio the other day that government is ready to open its arms to them, and that nothing will come upon them. Are you so confident about that?
Look, we want to be confident about our government, right? I mean, just because I'm an activist, that doesn't mean I don't see the good in what democracy can do, in what a government's role is. So if the government can make those assurances and actually keep to it, great. But what amazes me is, why don't you go to the root causes of this, right? Why don't you actually have a referendum, right? Reconciliation in place with all of the actors of the 5 armed conflicts, right? Why do you want to treat, symptoms here and there? These men and women fled for a reason. They didn't come back on their own accord. They fought tooth and nail not to come back. Okay? And so saying you're going to protect them is necessary, but it's not sufficient. It's just not sufficient. The real question is, How are we going to make the country, right? By we, I really mean, the Cameroon government, right? Because the Cameroon government has the yam and the spear, right? It has the cassava and the knife.
And the knife.
The Cameroon government has, right, has the greater responsibility, not the only responsibility, the greater responsibility to get to the root causes of why these men and women fled. Maybe there is some light at the end of this tunnel, right? Unfortunately, some people are meant to be the unfortunately to be the catalyst for something else to happen. In pidgin, something gets to happen, may another thing happen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Sure.
So something, maybe this group, this mass deportation, make the government realize, whoa, we need to do something, right? I mean, I'm hopeful that the mass deportation will not be the only reason why this weekend, babies were shot and killed. So if the Cameroon government cannot look internally to babies being shot and killed, if the Cameroon government cannot look at my village of Mbem in Mwa subdivision completely erased to the ground, right? If the Cameroon government cannot look at Levialem, cannot look at parts of Fako division, cannot look at Boko Haram, cannot look at all of that and say, whoa, we need to do something, then we want to offer them another prism. Look at these men and women who barely escaped these 5 conflicts, ran, and have been now massively deported, right? Take all of this and work on not just making them safe, work on making Cameroon safe. That way babies are not killed, and my heart goes out to the parents and loved ones. We failed these babies, we really have. And the Cameroon government has an opportunity here to make all of us safe.
Now, don't you think that the deportation of these Cameroonians also falls in line with the U.S. Policy, the U.S. Policy of immigration put in place by the Trump administration? U.S. media reports that this policy has made asylum virtually out of reach for many who are seeking it. Don't you think it's a manifestation of President Trump's immigration policy?
Thank you for that question. And yes, being in DC, yes, 2020 being an election year, these are all things we are talking about. But I would like for our people to know, the very discerning viewers of Heart Talk, to know that America, 400 years of caging Black bodies, right, including our Cameroonians, did not start today. Right? It just did not start today. Yes, Trump is a visible manifestation of racism, his policies in America, right? But quite frankly, every single administration has put Black people in cages for no reason, right? If you think about, I went to Seka, so in Limbe, we we know of and are part of the Bimbia community, right? And we know that our Cameroonian ancestors were stolen and were from Bimbia in Limbe, Cameroon, and sold to the Americas. That was the first immigration ban. That was the first travel ban coming out of Africa, coming out of present-day Cameroon, right? Those were the first policies to make sure that we are oppressed, that we are put in our places, and that we are in chains and in cages. It just did not start today, right? What has happened today is that it is blatant, right? What has happened today is that it's more in your face. What has happened today is that Cameroonians had their knuckles broken, right? Guns put to their heads. And that's why we filed that civil rights complaint, And that's why some of them were pulled out of the plane so that an investigation can happen, right? And Trump really is part of a system of systemic racism for 400 years. Now, do I think Biden will be different?
Exactly.
I'm going to tell you this.
Yeah, I'll be coming to that soon. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be coming to that particular issue. But now, tell us, you have met with some members, some Republicans, that's Benny Thompson and Karen Bass, who have wrote to the U.S. ICE, urging them to stop the deportation of these Cameroonians. How far have you gone with the advocacy with these two members of reps?
Thank you. Thank you. So I know, as all of you know and your viewers know, America, just like Cameroon, has two chambers, right? That's our legislative body. We have the lower chamber, which is the House of Representatives that you mentioned, which in Cameroon, it will be the equivalent of the parliament, right? You know, where Kavaye Jibril, I think, is still there. Yeah? Okay. Whew, too long. And then the upper chamber, which is the United States Senate, which again will be comparable to the Cameroon Senate with Nyat Dipenji. The House of Reps, has Karen Bass. So Karen Bass plays two roles, for those who may not be familiar. I know your viewers are discerning, but I'm hoping this will go far and wide. And, Karen Bass of California, remember we mentioned Bimbia and her ancestors who were stolen from Bimbia. Karen Bass actually traced her DNA to Cameroon, right? And she is, she's one of us. She's from the Cameroonian diaspora, right? She, in addition to being of Cameroonian descent, she's out of California. She's out of the Los Angeles area of California, where we have a lot of Cameroonians. A lot of Cameroonians vote for her out there in California, in the Los Angeles area. Karen Bass is also the chair of what we call the Congressional Black Caucus. So these are members of Congress, be them on the Senate side, and some of them, Kamala Harris and Cory Booker, they both ran for president, or be them in the House of Representatives, both chambers, any person who considers themselves Black can be part of the Congressional Black Caucus, also known as the CBC. Karen Bass is the chair of the CBC. Karen Bass is also the committee chair, the subcommittee chair, of Africa. So all policies that have to do with Africa from the United States goes through her subcommittee, right? So one of the reasons why we engaged her is because she's at this intersection, right, of Cameroonian diaspora, chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, and chair of the Africa Subcommittee. But I can tell you this right now, we were disappointed. If you looked at that letter came out minutes before the plane took off. We requested that letter back in March, back in February of 2020. Right? Because these men and women, some of them had been detained for 3 years, 2 years, 12 months, right? They protested in March. 40 Cameroonian men protested and went on hunger strike. A hunger strike, I know you know this, but is basically saying, I'm not going to eat until certain needs are met, until certain demands are met. 40 Cameroonian men in Pine Prairie, including 2 of them, who were deported, were part of that hunger strike. 140 Cameroonian women protested in Texas in a detention center called Don Houghton, right? And we let Congress know. We said, hey, knowing the Trump administration, knowing 400 years of oppression to Black people and Black people in cages, the Cameroon government, not just the Cameroon government, but the American government will retaliate. They did nothing. That letter for us is very, very insufficient. Okay? All it did was show that they finally got our February and March request and many, many requests since then, right? It did not, had this letter come out just a week earlier, maybe, right? Maybe that plane could have at least been delayed, right? What we are now hoping out of that letter is that the CBC, the Africa Subcommittee, will work on Cameroon TPS, which is temporary protected status, right? We're hoping, so that is like the next move. We're hoping that Cameroonians will get that. So how do we feel about that letter? We're actually disappointed. I'm not going to lie. We're disappointed that they waited so long. But we are hopeful that that just means that the wheels are finally churning and turning for the hundreds more Cameroonians that are unfortunately within the pipeline of deportation. And like you said, which we're hoping to stop their deportation.
Sylvia, I would like to know the place of immigration in the U.S. presidential election campaigns. We all know that elections are coming up next week. What does immigration hold particularly for the African American community?
Great question. Great question. So I'm just going to give you like a little bit of background. I know your Hard Talk viewers are very discerning, so they probably already know all of this. But for those who may not know, immigration has always been part of the American agenda, right? They say this country is founded by immigrants. But what they fail to always say is that the very first, foundation outside of Native Americans, where this was their land, the very first foundation was our people, right? Stolen from Bimbia in Limbe, Cameroon, sold to the Americans. That actually created the first immigration practice, right? Because when you force migration, they were unwilling and they were forced, right? And to the Americas, right there already, that puts a ban, right, to those African countries, right? So you could not just, present day Cameroon, you could not just leave and come here, So that 400 plus years of forced migration, of oppression and bans manifests today. That said, Black immigrants have always been at the forefront of advocacy within the Black community. Right? When you think about the civil rights movement, we had Black immigrants such as Storky Carmichael. I'm just going to say he's my favorite of all civil rights activists. I know there's, Dr. King, there are other people, but he's my favorite. Maybe it's because he's an immigrant. He was from Trinidad and Tobago, which is a small Caribbean country not far from Cuba. Some of you may know him as Mama Africa, Miriam Makeba's husband. They were married for 10 years. Miriam Makeba, out of South Africa, was the first Black woman, Black African woman to speak at the United Nations. And she spoke on apartheid South Africa. And so when you think about these two Black immigrants, right, within the civil rights movement, within the Black Party, the Black Panther Party, you know that immigration has always been part of America and Black America, right? When you think about today, right, there's a Black movement right now that many of you have heard of, many of you have been part of. It's called the Black Lives Matter, right, movement, right, BLM. BLM, I'm happy to say, was conceptualized by 3 Black women, one of whom is my friend and colleague, Opal Tomenti, who is Nigerian American, right? So immigration and African Americans have been part of this narrative for 400 years. Today, right, for those of you who follow me, I don't know, maybe you have some viewers who follow me, we've been pretty hard on the Democratic Party because 90+% of African Americans, which includes us as Cameroonian Americans, vote the Democratic Party, right? So I just want to say that, as you also know, Trump was voted in by majority white women. Black people did not do that in those numbers. But we need to expect more from our friends, okay? We need to expect more. And we don't think, right? I don't think the Democratic Party having 90% of black vote is doing enough on immigration, right? When the Democratic Party put out their black agenda, which they call it Lift Every Voice. This comes from a song during the civil rights movement, Lift Every Voice and Sing. And so they took that reference and titled their black agenda, which came out in May during the primary, called Lift Every Voice. It had 6 policy agenda items, very serious policy agenda items. It talked about housing and education, and talked about jobs, right? And the environment. You know, these are very serious topics. But do you know what else is a very serious topic? Immigration. As black people, we are in America because of forced immigration, right? Because of voluntary immigration or involuntary immigration. So why would immigration not feature, right, not be prominent in any democratic plan for black people? And then around August, he put out, this is Biden now, puts out his immigration agenda. And of course, that was directed mainly to the Latino communities. By doing so, he perpetuates the falsehood that immigration is predominantly a Latino issue, when we know that black people are in America as a result of forced migration, involuntary migration, which is slavery, voluntary migration, like those of us who came here, or our parents came here on their own accord. So we are so disappointed, right, that this did not happen. Now, to be balanced, right, Trump did put out his own black agenda. But as expected, immigration is missing out of the Trump black agenda. Are we surprised? No, we don't expect much from the Trump administration or from Republicans. But look, we expect much from the group, from the party that gets 90% of our black votes, from a party that also has a vice presidential candidate who is an immigrant. Kamala Harris, right, the U.S. Senator of California, has an Indian mother from the subcontinent of India, has a Jamaican father, right? And she is a black immigrant, correct? Now, Biden knows about black immigrants because he served as vice president to a man whose father was born in Kenya. You would think a man who is sandwiched between Obama and a Kenyan American and Kamala Harris, a Jamaican Indian American, will have the wherewithal to have immigration. But I'm happy to say that just last week, Biden put out very sketchy plan on black immigrants. Yes, he did include immigration as the top agenda on that very specific report, but that immigration was lacking in protecting the diversity visa, right? It was lacking on temporary protected status for Cameroonians, also known as TPS, right? It was lacking in looking at, proposing an African diaspora special rapporteur. Do you know the Jewish people have a special ambassador? Mm-hmm. So in addition to the ambassador to Israel, there is a very particular anti-Semitic Jewish ambassador position. We need that for Africans. We need that for the African diaspora. We need that for anti-blackness. That was not, so his very late, flimsy report on African immigrants just did not go far. We all know how, folks in Cameroon, have applied and have benefited from the diversity visa. It just even wasn't included. So that's our take. It's not enough. It does not go far enough. But we have about, a couple of more days to go. Who knows, maybe something can happen in the next couple of days.
All right, let's come now and look at the U.S. Contribution in resolving the crisis in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. We know that the whole world has been at shock following the death of about 7 school children who were shot by unknown gunmen right up to this moment. How can you weigh the American contribution in finding a solution to the crisis in the northwest and southwest regions?
That's a great question. That is at the core of what we do at the Cameroon American Council. That is why we were founded 10 years ago. And I just want to frame this by saying that the solution to the crisis of Cameroon is in Cameroon, right? You're out there holding it down. You're disseminating right information. You are bringing on, people from different perspectives. You are sharing information as you get it. So STV, Hard Talk, you are doing the hard work and the hard lifting. That is the reason why in 2017, actually, we can even go back to 2016. That's the reason why in 2016, when the crisis started, we had some lawyers reach out to us. A lot of lawyers who had worked in America and moved back home reached out to the Cameroon American Council and said, hey, can you lift this with Congress? Which we did. Right. That is why in 2017, when the internet was shut down, and we had folks, from the tech community, from in Boya and around, said, hey, can you work with, reach out to some of the tech groups, such as Access Now and Internet Sans Frontier, my good friend Julie Owona, to spread the word about this. And we did that. We had a congressional resolution lifting that. That is why when the Anglophone leaders were arrested, right? Felix Bala's family reached out and said, hey, can you put out a statement? We went to Indiana because we did research, worked with his families, worked with his other many lawyers and his many supporters, such as the late Dr. Suzanne Awe, who is my friend and Sekaret. She reached out and said, hey, my friend Bala could need some international support in addition to the work. And we went to Indiana where he went to school. He went to Notre Dame and asked Congresswoman Worowski, who is best friends, or at least very good friends with Pence, Vice President Pence, who was the governor of Indiana. And we did that. That is the reason why when, men and women, signed petitions that they wanted the American Congress to put out a resolution on stopping the conflict, on bringing all sides. Because as you know, the Anglophone crisis specifically does not only have Ambazonia separatists and the Cameroon government. Those are the two extreme ends of it, right? In between them are many, many viewpoints, right? Many philosophical ideologies, right? You have people who are federalists, you have people who are unionists, you have people who are for decentralization, you have people who are for centralization, you have hardcore CPDM, you have hardcore Ambazonians. So when we're talking about the sides and bringing them together, we're talking about all of the sides, right? And that is what the Cameroon American Council did, at least on the diaspora, right? And that is the reason why we hosted the first briefing, actually the only briefings on Cameroon have been out of the Cameroonian American Council.
Have you tried to reach out to Cameroonian authorities as well? You say you have worked with almost a cross-section of opposition leaders and activists. What about the government side?
Absolutely. So guess what? This year, May 20th, 2020. I'm just going to talk about the most recent one. We actually we went to the embassy. One of my very close collaborators, remember I mentioned that Martin Ayaba, who is a brother and part of the Amazonian sympathizers, he actually runs a blog, used to work for the Cameroon American Council. Well, the president of the CPDM youth, Junior Mekinda, many of you know him, used to work for us too. He was my New York coordinator, right? And we've kept pretty solid relationships with him, even though on certain aspects of CPDM and the Cameroon government, we differ. Same thing with Martin Ayaba. We have kept pretty good relationships with him, even though on certain aspects of Amazonia, we differ, right? What we just do is that we look for common ground. So Junior Mekinda invited us to the Cameroon embassy because he wanted to make sure that we are engaging with the Cameroon government, and so we accepted that invitation, and I went to the embassy. The embassy, met with the ambassador, right? And the ambassador knows. He calls me Ms. Bello. Every time he sees me, he's like, Ms. Bello, how are you? I know you're out there fighting for the good of the people. Don't be a stranger. And I let him know, Mr. Ambassador, there's a lot you can do. There's a lot the Cameroon government can do. Why are you not doing it? And he keeps saying, he's been hosting a diaspora summit. He's been hosting a diaspora roundtable. He's been hosting fundraisers for some of the displaced men and women.
Okay.
And we smiled, and I told him in no uncertain terms that I believe his government can do much, much more. We also met with the number 2 of the Cameroon government, who actually happens to be from Southwest. He's brand new, and told him the same thing. We met with, for the last 4 years, my contact at the Cameroon embassy has been Professor Ayok, who comes out of academia, right? He comes out of the University of Gaoundéré, and Professor Ayok is now the cultural attaché, right? Which means that as an organization, I fall, and my organization falls under his portfolio. So Professor Ayok has really been our contact when the Cameroonian died last October.
Okay, Sylvie.
Go ahead.
All right, Sylvia. Unfortunately, we'll have to stop because time is not really our friend. We thank you very much for being with us.
So I just want to say thank you.
Yep.
Please look us up. We have petitions out. We are fighting for temporary protected status so Cameroonians can have papers. And this is not just Cameroonians in detention, but any Cameroonian who doesn't have papers and who has been in America will benefit from TPS. So invite us back so we can talk about TPS for Cameroon. Thank you. Au revoir. Bye.
Right. Thank you very much, Sylvie. It was a great pleasure being with you. And to you, televiewers, it was a big pleasure being with you in this edition of the program, Heart Talk. Our hearts are grieving with the incidents in Kumba. Our regards to the families that are concerned, and may the souls of the 7 innocent children rest in perfect peace. Have a great time watching programs on STV. Bye-bye.